As a practical matter, I want to ask you a subjective question. When you go to work, are you inspired to follow the person that is leading you? Are you committed to giving them all you have, or, in your judgment, do they still have more work to do to gain your trust? Well, according to our friends over at Gallup, leaders still have some substantial work to do if they want to gain the trust of the people that they're in charge or entrusted to lead. According to an April 2023 survey, it found that only 21% of workers trust the direction that their bosses are leading them. For comparison's sake, my friends over at goodhire.com report 70% of American workers strongly enjoy working for their manager. 82% of the American workforce admitted to the publication that they would potentially quit their job because of a bad manager. And finally, 84% of the American workforce admitted that they believe that they could do their manager's job better than what they're seeing at work from their leadership. Therefore, with all the statistical data in hand, let's have a conversation about effective leadership. And for that, I want to enlist the help of my friend Ron Reich. He's been in the field of leadership development for over 30 years, and his company, RLB Training and Development, focuses on leadership and development for businesses both big and small, providing them with executive coaching, corporate training, and team building exercises in order to maximize the productivity and potential of not only your bottom line, but also your ability to establish human capital and relatability to the people that you're in charge of leading to the greatest heights of prosperity. Reich places a special emphasis on the importance of psychological safety and the value of inclusive leadership, and how it can really draw out a competitive advantage for leaders, companies, and organizations alike. So, as we work our way through National Disability Employment Awareness Month, my friends, let's have an in-depth conversation about effective and inclusive leadership. For that, Reich is standing by. So, without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about leadership this morning. Great to see you, and thanks as always for a few minutes, my friend.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it.
Absolutely. Now, Ron, I know that leadership is your passion, and you've spent over 30 years helping people form great leadership teams and become better leaders. So tell me, Ron, out of all of the work that you've done over the past 3 decades, what have you learned the most about leadership and how it can positively affect people if they do it correctly?
Well, I mean, I think leadership is just is Kevin just the key to everything. And I mean, I think some of the major things that I've learned over all these years. Number one, everybody is a leader. Everybody, regardless of role, leadership is not a title. Whether you do have, you're a vice president, whether you're a supervisor, whether you are a marketing assistant, whatever it might be, everybody is a leader. Everybody leads themselves. Everybody influences other people. Everybody's a leader. And I think that's something that I've learned. I think also one of the biggest things for me, Kevin, that for in order for people to be effective relative to leadership is to be human. Is just to be human, is to treat people well, to get to know people, and that makes such a difference.
It certainly does, Ron. And as I know, you know that October, my friend, is a National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and it's particularly important to me to highlight the needs of folks with disabilities, Ron, because I was born with cerebral palsy. So tell me, why is it important, do you think, that we bring attention to this matter? And tell me, why do you think it's important to infuse folks with disabilities into the workforce?
Kevin, no matter what, everybody has something to contribute. And there's just no doubt in my mind about that. And I think everybody brings such a unique perspective, and whether someone has a disability or whether someone doesn't, one of the key things here, again, it's going back to being human, is just listening to people, accepting diverse opinions, accepting diverse uh, experiences, and just everything else, and really embracing that, and I'll just leave it at that. Embracing that and allowing it to blossom, if you will, in the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron, as you mentioned before we started recording, my friend, you're a Giants season ticket holder and you're a big Giants fan. And I know that you've traveled as far away as Africa. And I know you're an avid traveler with the work that you do. And Ron, I'm fascinated to ask you, what fascinates you the most about people, and what have you learned throughout your international travel?
Through all the traveling that I have done, both from a vacation perspective and also even just from a business perspective, Kevin, I think the thing that fascinates me so much is just kind of what you were saying before, how unbelievably diverse this country is and how unbelievably diverse this entire world is. And just the opportunity to meet people, talk to people who have such different backgrounds, who have done such different things. And I think the one thing that I love, that I've seen in so many different areas, again, both domestically and internationally, is how so many people accept the things that they cannot change. And I mean that in a good way, where it's just like, okay, 'cause, we've been to some economically depressed areas, and it's just people are just so open and just so happy, and that impresses me greatly. And I mean, I love talking with anybody.
Well, I tell you, engaging in conversation is the best, isn't it?
It certainly is. It
Uh,
certainly is.
yeah, absolutely. And Ron, tell me, do we think Daniel Jones is your franchise quarterback, my friend?
I, I think he can do the job. Yes, I really do. I think he can do it. I think, and like anybody, any good leader, he needs help. He
Uh,
needs good help around him, and right now he doesn't have the help.
we'll start by giving that offensive line a makeover, okay?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Hey, Ron, when we talk about inclusion, how do you think it applies to leadership? So, how would you define inclusive leadership?
Kevin, there's something I've become interested in over, I don't know, maybe the past year or so. And I know it's a little something about it. I'm not an expert by any stretch. I think that with inclusion, what I start to think about is psychological safety. And in order to have true inclusion with people, everybody needs to feel safe. And psychological safety, the first step in that is indeed called inclusion, and just making sure that people are included in conversations, in meetings, that they are included when a group is going out to lunch, just whatever it might be, include them. And then, secondly, allowing people to learn, which is the second phase, as I understand it, of psychological safety, is allowing people ask questions, to show people, to train people on tasks. So this is what you need to do, and to continue to allow them to learn and to develop and to continue to ask questions. And then contributing is the third phase. Once these individuals are ready to contribute, you need to leave them alone. And in other words, not be a micromanager or just not be on top of people. And then last and not least, the fourth phase is challenge. And then we need to allow anybody, and just from the inclusion perspective, anybody needs to be able to challenge a leader's thinking, or to challenge a colleague's thinking. I'm not sure this is a good idea. I'm not sure we're ready to launch this product yet. I don't think it's a good idea to, I don't know, implement the new software at this point, whatever it might be. And I think when people feel psychologically safe, that's a big part of inclusion for me.
Yeah, and just building on that, Ron, I think if you include people, it gives companies or organizations a competitive advantage, doesn't it?
Oh, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly, Kevin. And I mean, this is where, again, we were talking before how important it is to be human, how important it is to have diverse opinions, diverse experiences, everything. There's no doubt that that's a competitive advantage in my mind. None.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron, I'm also fascinated to ask you, how do you think we can eliminate rigid thinking? And what I mean by that is, sometimes you get into leadership and you have a certain way of doing something that's been successful, but sometimes there's a disconnect between the people you're leading and what you're trying to accomplish. So, how do you think we can get rid of rigid thinking as leaders?
For me, Kevin, I mean, the word that just pops into my mind very quickly is ego. And I think so often leaders can have big egos. Leaders, and some, not all, obviously. And I think sometimes people will dig their heels in just so deeply, where it's like, it's my idea, this is my department, this is the way we do things, this is how it's going to go. And a big part of emotional intelligence is what you're talking about, Kevin, is having flexible thinking. And just allowing people to express different ideas, different opinions, different thoughts, different perspectives. And I mean, how can we go about that? I think so much of it again will tie back to tie back to psychological safety, and also when people know each other well and they have that human connection. It's been my experience that's where more often than not people will tend to be a little bit more flexible. Whereas just like Kevin, I'm not sure we're going in the right direction here. If we have a good relationship, it's just been my experience that at least we can have more of a conversation about the issue at hand. And neither you or I need to, again, like I said before, dig our heels in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rana, building on that point you just made, how important do you think it is to be a relatable leader? And also the importance of vulnerability as a leader to really show the people that you're leading, like you said, that you are human as a leader. So what does it mean to you to be a relatable leader?
I think a relatable leader, Kevin, means a lot of different things. And you use the word vulnerable. And for me, I think that's critical as well. Is that I love it when leaders I know or when I'm working with someone and they can make themselves vulnerable to me or make themselves vulnerable to their colleagues. In that, hey guys, that was a mistake I made. Hey guys, we shouldn't have done that. That was my fault. Just anything along those lines is critical. And going back to the relatable piece too, I think that it's just so important to just be able to have normal conversations with people. And when I say normal conversations, just chatting. Like you and I were before the show a little bit. Just, how was your weekend? What was going on? And just those sorts of things. When people realize, hey, he or she is human, he or she is a nice woman or a nice guy, it just makes things that much easier. And again, it starts to create, I'll circle back, more and more and more psychological safety.
Yeah, and Ron, I'll give you a quick story. Today, my friend is actually Canadian Thanksgiving, and I'm coming from you to Canada this morning. So I'm curious, Ron, what are you most thankful for in life?
I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I think I know myself really well, and what I'm grateful for that, Kevin, because it allows me to have a life really beyond my dreams. And I mean what I say. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what my strengths are. I know what my limitations are. And, my wife and I get along extremely well. And I think that's a big part of it. And I mean, and I'm linking that back to the gratefulness of I know who I am because it allows me to have a wonderful relationship with her. I have wonderful relationships with people, with my friends. And I think, I like to think, in fact, I know I do. I don't even have to say I like to think. I have wonderful relationships with my clients and everything else. And I believe so strongly, like I said, it's because I know myself really well.
It helps to know what your strengths are and where you need a little bit of help, doesn't it?
Sure, sure. And I'm not afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. How do you think we can encourage leaders to say three words that they really don't like saying? I don't know, and ask for help. What do you think is the key there, my friend?
I think there again, it's realizing that nobody knows everything. That's okay. And for me, it is an absolute sign of strength to have people say, "I don't know. I need help." And I just think, how can we make that happen? I think a lot of it comes from, Kevin, truly, just more education, more training, and just letting people know that, hey, this is okay. There is nothing wrong with that. The best leaders with whom I've worked over the years are aware of those things. And it's the leaders like you brought up before. It's the leaders who struggle, who are rigid in their thinking, who think they know everything, and every decision is going to be their decision with very little input from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron, next week here in Ontario is actually Small Business Awareness Week, my friend. So, as you know, small businesses are the lifeblood of any economy, my friend. And I'm addressing a group of leaders from city government side in Vaughan, Ontario, virtually next week. So, selfishly, I'm going to ask you this question. What do you think is the key to helping small businesses really excel in their leadership style, especially if they don't have large budgets to hire a big staff? So, what do you think is the key for small business leaders to succeed?
I think one thing, Kevin, that pops into my mind is very simply if any organization wants to be successful, and particularly I think even like a smaller to mid-sized firms, they need to know what their vision is. They need to know who they are, what they are, and what their guiding light is. Because it's been my experience over the past few years and just very recently. I'm working with a client right now where, as a family-owned business, and as they've grown, things have become cumbersome, and there's no real structure in place. And I've helped them to develop a culture statement. We have come up with some with values, with how they're going to treat each other. And I mean, I think that's so critical for any business like that, because otherwise, as the organization grows, there's just going to be mayhem.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Ron, I'm also I wanted to go back to the concept of continual learning because, as you know, Ron, as leaders and as people, the day that you stop learning, is my belief, is the day that you spiritually and psychologically sort of are dead. So tell me about the importance of continual learning as managers because if you want to be a effective leader, you always have to continue to learn, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely, Kevin. I mean, there's a quote from the late Joe Paterno, who said quite a few years ago, "If you're not getting better, you're getting worse," and that makes sense to me. I mean, I believe in that so strongly that I am a voracious reader. I try to read about 10 pages every day of either of a business book or a fiction book, although I try to concentrate on the business books. And over the past 20 years or so, I think I've read over 400 books. And again, the point I make here is not to pat myself on the back. That reading has helped to make me such a resource to people, where I can recommend books. I can pull information from books that I've read and share it with people when I'm in a coaching session or even in a training session itself. And I mean, it's just continuous learning because otherwise my mind will go to mush real quickly.
Ron, there's a sign in my office that says life is a constant game of learning, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Ron, when we talk about the word effectiveness, what do you think it means to maximize being effective both in your personal and professional life?
You know, Kevin, I'm chuckling because Stephen Covey talks about effectiveness very early on in the workshop, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And for me, the way I define effectiveness, doing the next right thing. I want to do the next right thing, and that makes me effective because when I do the next right thing, it's gonna help me to get the results I want today. And by continuing to do the next right thing, I will get even better results moving forward compared to efficiency. And, yeah, and that's what, and see, again, for me, effectiveness, do the next right thing. Efficiency, do things right. Well, that might be all well and good except if I'm being efficient and I'm not doing the right things, I'm not making any progress.
And you're not making as much money, right?
That's right.
That's exactly right. And you know, Ron, no matter what phase you are in life, I think the key to living an effective life in business and at work, and in your personal life for that matter, is forming great relationships or effective relationships and really building on what I call a sort of the empathy of people, really connecting with them on a human level, as we've been talking about. So, in your judgment, what's the key to forming great relationships?
I think forming great relationships, Kevin, number one, you need to be genuine. You need to really care. And I think for me, I'm going to go back to, I'll bring up the word empathy. And I think one of the key things is to be empathetic with people. And to understand people, I need to ask questions so I can know and understand what their perspective is, where they're coming from, what's happening with them. And then the second part of empathy for me is caring, because I care about a lot of different things. I mean, I care about you. I care about the relationship. I care about, from a business perspective, I care about quality products, safety, and all these other things. And the point I'm making is by being empathetic, it also requires me to have difficult conversations with people because I can't please everybody all the time. That's okay. And whether we're in a personal relationship or a professional relationship, I want to understand you. Once I understand you, and then based upon things about which I care, then we can help each other. Maybe I can help you. Maybe we do need to have a tough conversation. That's okay because that's a part of any relationship, any healthy relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Ron, I'm curious to ask you about how we reinvent ourselves as leaders, particularly after COVID-19, and really rethinking leadership in order to maximize productivity. So, what do you think it means to reinvent yourself as a leader, and how do you think we should go about looking at leadership after the COVID-19 pandemic, my friend?
I think reinventing for me, Kevin, is going to go back to kind of what we talked about before is just having flexible thinking, being open to new things. And again, continuous learning and continuous learning can come from so many different areas. It can come from reading. It can come from attending training sessions. It can come from networking. It can come from going to conferences and just constantly being open to new things and not allowing yourself to get caught up in the minutia of the day-to-day work, if you will. And I think that's one of the other things that happens too is that I'm too busy to read today. I'm too busy to go to that conference. It's like, man, for me, that's dangerous.
Yeah, and you brought up something interesting, Ron, so I'll follow up. I am a firm believer that networking is the lifeblood to business and to making progress professionally and personally, for that matter. So tell me about the importance of networking specifically and why leaders and others in business should embrace it as well.
Yeah, I mean, networking for me, Kevin, again, I'm going to go back to when I'm networking, what I always try to do is to learn more about the individual with whom I'm speaking or individuals with whom I'm speaking. I want to know more about you. I want to know who you are, what you are all about. Again, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, because when I know more about you, that's how I can then position myself. And again, whether it's personal or professional, networking to me is about asking questions. It's about getting to know the other individuals and letting them share with me. I'm going to share too. My preference, though, always is if I can, I want to know more about you first.
Yeah, Ron, when I do discovery calls as a motivational speaker, my first rule of thumb is always to shut up, soak up the information, and then talk only when spoken to. Right now,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
because then you can learn how best you can add value as a leader. Right? If you
Kevin, that's exactly it. I mean, that is exactly it. And I heard somebody say many years ago, and I hung on to it, said if you start talking right away with to a client or anyone along those lines, and they haven't shared much with you, how do you possibly know that what you're saying to them is important?
Well, if you don't find out where their pain points are or how you can best serve them, what you have to say it renders itself meaningless if it doesn't resonate with the person you're trying to help, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron, I'm also curious to ask you about team building. And adding value. So, what do you think is the key to building effective teams and really maximizing the value you can add as leaders? What do you think is the key there?
I think the key is, Kevin, really everything we've been talking about throughout our conversation here. I think diversity is critical from a personality perspective. I think it's critical from an experience perspective, and just allowing people to be themselves, and and again creating that psychologically safe environment where people can learn, where people can contribute, and equally as important, where people can challenge each other, challenge ideas, challenge thinking in the best interests of the organization or in the best interest of the department or of the project. I mean, and that's the short version.
Yeah, so I'll try to draw a more expensive answer by asking you your thoughts on accountability as leaders and the thought about communication, because any effective leader should know how to communicate. Would you agree with that? So how do you think accountability and communication are interconnected?
Communication is just everything, Kevin. It's just without that, where are we? And I mean, I think when people say communicate, for me, the one thing I've always admired about the leaders with whom I've worked that I respect is that they will let people know exactly what's going on, whether it's good news, whether it's difficult news from an organizational perspective. These are the individuals that will communicate and give good feedback to people. They'll praise them when they deserve it. They'll also give them the developmental feedback that they need, just all of these different things because it is all about communication.
It certainly is. And we can apply that to other areas of life too, I'm sure, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, and Ron, selfishly as because I know you do motivational speaking as well, and you speak to businesses from all over the country and some cases all over the world. So, what do you think is the fundamental key to succeeding as a public speaker and again adding value to audiences? What do you think is the key there?
You know what? I think, Kevin, I'm going to go back to what we were just talking about. The key is for me to make sure that you know what your client is looking for. Is just to make absolutely sure that that the topic you're going to talk about is relevant to them, that it adds value to them, and that also that people are that your audience gets involved. The one thing I never want to do, I never want to be called a talking head. As I want to involve people, I want them to be thinking, I want them to be interacting either with each other or with me, whatever it might be. And I think those are just critical aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron, you've brought up emotional intelligence throughout our conversation this morning. So I'm curious, when we talk about emotional intelligence and really breaking down barriers to inclusion, how do you think those two things are interconnected?
I think, well, yeah, they are interconnected for me, Kevin, again, because the biggest part of emotional intelligence for me, or the definition, if you will, to very succinctly, and again, just as I see it, emotional intelligence is getting to know yourself extremely well. And when you talk about inclusion here and emotional intelligence, I need to be self-aware of who am I including? Am I including everybody? Who what are my blind spots here? And then again, going back to being open to getting the feedback from people. If I'm making mistakes or I'm not being as effective as I can, am I doing the right things? Being from effectiveness.
Yeah, and Ron, I've got two more questions for you. And the first has to do with if I gave you $1 million to promote or produce a commercial about effective leadership, and you had one fundamental message that you wanted people to get throughout the course of the commercial, what do you think that core message would be that you would want people to receive?
Kevin, I'm going to go back and say again, relationships are key. That's what I would want people to remember. Relationships are key. I can't do it alone. I need help. And in order for me to get the help that I need, to get the input that I need to have good relationships with people. So I think that for me is the biggest piece.
Relationships are reliable, aren't they?
Yeah.
And Ron, my final question for you this morning has to do with legacy and the concept of your own personal and professional legacy and how you want your legacy to be defined.
People have asked me that before, Kevin. And I think for me, the way I want to be remembered, I would like to be remembered as a man who cared about, who cared about people, who cared about helping to make people better, and who was just genuine and sincere. And that's what I would like my legacy to be.
Being authentic goes a long way, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Absolutely, my friend. And Finally, Ron, tell me if people want to get connected with the great work that you do from a leadership or a motivational speaking perspective, what's the best way they can do that?
Two ways to do it, Kevin. That number one would be through LinkedIn, and people can just find me there. My name is Ron Reich, Reich, and the name of my company is RLB RLB Training and Development. And you can just search for me on LinkedIn. People can also find me on Instagram, and my handle is leadership at RLB, and so you can find me there.
Well, fabulous. And I have to tell you, Ron, I circled this conversation on my calendar because, leadership and effectively leading people is so much fun and so effectively important, my friend. And you're off to a running start in doing that. And I want to thank you for providing people the space to become effective leaders and really encouraging the notion of communication and leadership, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here this morning.
Kevin, it's been my pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate your time.